No matter where you buy Baccala, it's gonna be loaded with salt. This one is pretty much like the maximum amount of salt. So I have 3 pounds right here. They bent it under so they can fit it all in there. Let's rinse this underwater and we try to remove as much exterior salt as we can. Use ideally a glass bowl instead of a metal bowl, something that the salt won't absorb into. It'll just stick, and then you can change your water every 8, 12 hours. Put new, fresh, clean water in there. You'll be able to see the salt come off again. So here's one piece, and then the larger piece. So make sure they're completely submerged and a ton of salt's gonna come out. You can't go by a recipe that says do it for 24 hours or a recipe that says do it for 48 hours. You have to go by the actual taste. What you can do is if you think most of the salt is gone, you could cut off a little piece, just boil it for a few minutes to cook it through, then taste it. If it tastes way too salty to you, put it back in the water, fresh water again, and go through the process for another 12 to 24 hours. Typically, it will take less than 3 days. Completely covered, you can put them in the fridge. We'll take a look back at this after 24 hours and see if we need to keep going with changing the water and finally get it to where it's not too salty. It's been 3 full days that it has been in my refrigerator. I changed the water twice. We only need about 1 pound for cod. Fritters call them salt cod balls. You can make them into a ball. You can make them kind of an odd shape. It doesn't really matter. Right now, let's boil this cod in milk and water. And since it's all gonna be broken up, if you have a smaller pan, you can just cut it up into pieces right now. This was a 3 pound piece. If you get a big piece of it and you wanna make both of these recipes, use like your smaller parts for this recipe and save your bigger, thicker parts for the second recipe, which is going to be similar to a puttanesca sauce for it. And that's gonna be like the star, like main dish. Big pan, pot, whatever, the fish in. 1.5 cups of milk. Fill the rest up with water, just get it above there. All right, that's good. And we're gonna bring this to a simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's actually what's nice about having a portable stove. I could just kind of push my stove out of the way. The milk and the water, this process is gonna make it moist, let the fish stay moist. We're gonna mash these. Put these in boiling water, cook them until they are fork tender. 3 cloves of garlic, give or take. If you want less, use less. And we're gonna make a paste. Take your knife and just hit it and get the skin off. Okay, I'm just gonna chop it. All right, take some salt and put it right on top. It's just gonna provide friction. It's gonna allow to make the paste very easily. And just press down. Okay, so there's the fish. It's all cooked now. It's been about 20 minutes that it was just lightly simmering in the milk and water. My wife just came down here. She said it smelled good. It really does smell good. So put it in a colander, strain it, and just rinse it under cold water to cool it down. While that's cooling, we can cut the onion and parsley. I want to do a pretty fine dice right here because this is all going to go into the fritter and we don't really want any big pieces of the onion either. But do the best you can. It's about 1/2 cup. Lots of parsley. So taking out, these big stems are coming out. But all the rest can basically stay. This is washed, cleaned. I'd say it's about 1/2 cup of parsley. Broke out the ricer. If you don't have a ricer, you can use a masher. Maybe you have that. If you don't have that, you can just use a fork. This is what you would use, to make gnocchi. Got to do that still. Haven't done that one yet. I love the ricotta gnocchi too. You take a fork like this and you kind of just like move it apart. As you do that, put your good stuff to one side. And if you find any bones, just keep them off on a paper towel. So that's what you're trying to do. All right, so this dark part over here, Okay, kind of the skin area. This one, you can discard that. You don't have to. You could leave that. I'm just gonna take all the good meat off of it. All right, so I broke it all up. It's all pretty much broken in my hands. You can take your fork and you can push a little bit more right into it. Second dish is great, but I feel like this is the one you want to make first because this is like more of like an appetizer. Garlic, all the parsley. Let's get the pepper in, 1 teaspoon of pepper, so that's a decent amount. Don't put any salt in right now. Mix this all together, really incorporate this well, and then we want to taste this. We want to taste the cod itself to know if it needs salt. That's a big piece of cod right there. They're definitely going to need salt. So we're successful getting all the salt out. Not all of it, but most of it out. So I'm gonna put in 1 teaspoon now, and then I'm gonna sprinkle when they come out at the end. And on top of that, I'm actually gonna add a little bit more pepper too. So probably 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper. So you have an opportunity to really taste this to get it right. It's not like when you're making, say, a raw meatball. You can't do that. You can't just dig into your raw pork and raw beef meatballs. So you have to have kind of like a trained recipe that you know roughly how much salt and cheese and everything goes in there. 2 eggs. If it ends up not being wet enough, use 3 eggs. All right, mix this all around and let's see if we need another egg or not. We want this to be fairly firm. We don't want it to be really loose, falling apart or anything like that. And I can tell already this is gonna be perfect. Just like when you made meatballs, you can oil your hands or you can wet them with water. I'm just gonna take a little bit of water here on my hands. So now when I form the fritter, it won't really stick. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more than 1 tablespoon. You might have to do like every 1 or 2 that you do. Here they all are. It's easier this way. Just put them all on a parchment paper. They won't stick at all. And now you can kind of just keep this on the side while you're frying. Definitely use canola oil for this. Don't use olive oil. It takes too much oil. You'll come across some recipes will say to use 3 inches of oil. You can do that, or you can just kind of do maybe even 1/2 or 3/4 and just turn them. So you do whichever one you want. I'm only gonna go up about 1 inch and I'll just turn them. You know, when you use that much oil, it's just disposing of it, and it's kind of wasteful too. Sometimes you have to use high oil though. The fried calamari that we did that was the first episode in this Feast of 7 Fishes series. This is the final episode. For the fried calamari, we used about 3 inches of oil. So the oil is pretty good now. You can take a wooden spoon. You see those little bubbles forming? So that's good. You could also just throw one in right now to test. It's never a bad idea to test. First one, we did the same thing with the fried calamari. You get it perfect then. These take about 3, 4, 5 minutes total. Maybe 3 minutes on each side. We just want to get them golden brown. All right, they're looking perfectly golden. You can test this one before you start. Put a little salt on it, make sure it's perfect. But I can tell already that they're gonna be great. And I'm gonna do 2 batches. I don't wanna risk, I got another 14. I don't wanna try to crowd them too much. Make sure you salt them right away when they come out. Now they're best when they're piping hot right out of the oil, but what you can do is you can put 170 degrees Fahrenheit in your oven, or the lowest your oven will go. Keep them on the wire rack in there while you prepare another dish. Little squeeze of lemon. Very good. So we're gonna put potatoes in here. That's gonna be the first thing you wanna do. And since the fish is only gonna take like 15 minutes in the oven, the potatoes wouldn't be cooked enough. So the simple solution here is to parboil these potatoes. I think quartering them for a potato this size is probably a good idea. I wanna cook these basically to almost fork tender, but not quite, because they're gonna cook for 15 more minutes in the oven with the fish. So this recipe, I had 2 pounds. I said 1.5 to 2 pounds of Baccala. That'll be in the written description. Right here, I have probably not quite 1.5 pounds. So in order to make up that difference, I can add a few more potatoes here. That's just something to keep in mind that you can always do with your dishes. And that is what I'm gonna do, because we're gonna eat this tonight. Today is December 9th. It is not December 24th when I'm filming this. But if you intend to make this, make sure you get your Baccala, I would say 5 days before Christmas Eve. You might not be able to find it at that point. You're gonna have to let it soak for 2 to 3 days. All right, so get these in boiling water, a little bit less than fork tender. 3 cloves of garlic. If you want more, use more. Just give it a hit and you'll be able to remove the skin in one shot. Okay, like that. These are rinsed clean tomatoes, and they are cherry tomatoes. I have about a little bit over a pound here. If you don't have fresh cherry tomatoes, you could use canned tomatoes. You can chop about half of them, leave the other half whole. They're all gonna break down in the sauce anyway. Plus they won't all roll off your cutting board. I have 2 tablespoons of capers that have been rinsed to take some of the saltiness off of them. And then right here, I have Gaeta olives. Now, if you can't find Gaeta olives, which you might have a hard time finding them, use Kalamata. Any good quality olive would be fine here. And about a 1/4 cup of these. They're very similar to Kalamata. Make sure when you do it that you're being very careful to remove each one. Just take your knife and run through these. Just like that. You don't have to do anything more than that. All right, the potatoes are done. Just leave them off to the side, and then parsley and basil. Just gonna remove all the stems and chop up the parsley fairly fine, and the basil save to the end, little chop right on top. So here's the cod, and since we know that we got most of the salt out of it, so we're gonna have to add salt to this, believe it or not, even with these olives. I'm gonna season up just a little bit of salt and pepper on both sides of these, and then we're gonna dust in this flour. We're gonna fry up the fish. We'll do that after we make our sauce, but for now you can just season these up. Just a bit of salt. This is a good pan that if you have any type of oven pan that you could put on a burner, you can make the sauce in here, and then I'm gonna use another pan to sear the fish that we seasoned in flour. But if you don't have that, you could just make your sauce in any pan, move it into an oven-safe baking dish or whatever, and do your fish. So this just eliminates having to dirty a few pans. It's regular olive oil, not extra virgin. If you want to use extra virgin, go ahead, but we're going to finish with extra virgin, the really good stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter. Put the garlic in. Stir it around for 20 seconds. It's very small. It's going to get brown right away. Once it releases its flavor a little bit, get the tomatoes right in. Let the tomatoes cook for a second. It doesn't really matter. You can put the wine in now. We're gonna cook out the wine. We're gonna turn up the temperature just a bit, and then we'll lower it back down again to simmer the sauce out. Going to use a 1/2 cup of this. This is Pinot Grigio, but Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, any dry white wine would be fine. Don't use a sweet wine. When you put it in, keep your head back. Heat up to about medium now. You just want the alcohol smell to evaporate, but the liquid, not all the liquid has to go away. Don't worry about that. I'm turning the heat back down now. So that took about 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Get the tomatoes to kind of break apart like that. And this sauce it's gonna continue to simmer. We're gonna simmer this. I'm just gonna simmer it on my real stove over there. Before I do that, let's add the olives in. Gaeta olives and the capers. If you think you don't have enough tomato, you can add a little bit of a canned tomato. You could add a little bit of paste too. That would be totally fine. We're gonna cook the fish. We already have it seasoned with salt and pepper, and we're just going to dust it in this flour. Now, I'm using a non-stick pan here. I recommend you do the same. You could probably go medium with this pan. Or the pan's about medium, and we're gonna fry up the floured fish for only a couple minutes on each side. Separate the fish pieces as best you can and take a little bit of the sauce right on top. Just like that. And then the potatoes. Kind of nestle them all in there. Mix them around. All right, you can put a little bit more sauce. Try to get it on the potatoes if you want, but it doesn't really matter. Everything's gonna come together as it cooks. And the fish probably needs about 15 minutes on 400 degrees. So right here, this looks perfect. The tomatoes broke down. The fish is perfectly cooked. You like kind of toss it all together. You don't want to maybe pull the fish pieces out, then toss all the potatoes together. I'm gonna put a bunch of parsley on top. And then fresh basil, tear it up. Okay, then mix that in there too. A little really good extra virgin olive oil. You can do this when you plate too. And that looks so good. If you can't do all 7, do 2, 3, maybe 4, mix and match. If you can't find Baccala, you can use regular cod, which would probably be just as good as this or even better. I've said it in the earlier, I think in the calamari episode, it's not a poor man's fish anymore. It's pretty expensive. It's actually probably more expensive than regular cod in the store. But you know, out of tradition, you want to try to make one. So make one, let me know in the comments if you did. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time.